Hey everyone, welcome back. So we're back with a new video, this time on values. So have you ever come across your painting looking dull or not realistic? The lighting is looking wrong, the shadows and light or looking weird, or if your colors are not looking right, um, chances are you got your values wrong. I'm sure you'd have come across the same thing when you watch a lot of tutorials on painting online, or if you're a student in art school, I'm sure your teacher told you at least once, watch your values, check your values. So rightfully so, because values I think are extremely important. They are what determines how well your painting reads. If you can read the foreground from the background, it's only because of values. How the lighting works. Is it a sunny lighting, or is it a mood lighting, or if it's a horror film lighting? You can only establish those through your values. So let's jump into Photoshop and let's learn all about values. We're not going to be talking about color today. That will be for another video. Today I just wanted to focus on values, and this might be a two-part video. So the first one just explaining what values are, and the second one how we can use them in paintings, how we work with them, and the third one will do a demonstration of a real-time demonstration of how to study values, how I study values to get better at them. So for our today's agenda, let's just learn what values are. Yep, cool. So what are values? Okay, so here I have a good old coin. It's just a simple Indian coin. So basically, values and color are basically the same coin. So in one side I have value, on the other side I have color, which means they both are interlinked. You can't have one without the other. So each color is, think of it as, it has a other side, which is its value. So values basically mean how dark or light a color is. Any color that you might choose, from your color wheel, it has a value tied in with it. So that's basically what values mean. Values mean how dark or light is your color. So that's simple. That's what values mean. So let's quickly, check how, values work in Photoshop. This is how they work in any program. So, let's just quickly look at that. So here we have a value scale. So the value scale is okay. So here we have it. So basically it runs, let's say it runs from, let me quickly pick up a brush here. Okay. So the value scale runs from 0 to 10, with 0 being pure black, which is the absence of light. Pure black has nothing. It has no color, it has no light. No light. And 10 being pure white, which is also pure, full light. It's fully in light. You can't have anything brighter than 10. There's nothing brighter than pure white. When you're painting, if you're painting the sun, chances are you'll probably be using pure white, because there's nothing brighter than the sun and there's nothing brighter than pure white. So in between is all we have, is all our grays. So everything in between 0 to 10. So that can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we have, these are the 10 levels of grays we have to work with, and all our lighting scenarios, be it sunlight, night light, moonlight, indoor light, everything that we paint them, with choosing the values in between here. And all the colors that we know, light red, bright yellow, moody blue, everything falls under, this 1 to 9 area. I say 1 to 9 because 0 again we know is pure black, which has no color, and pure 10 is pure white, which has no color. White is also not a color. So all the colors that we know falls under this 1 to 9 area. So that's basically what the value scale is. So the value scale runs from 0 to 10. with 0 being pure black and 10 being pure white, and all the colors we know in the rainbow and in the color wheel sit between, this 1 to 9 area. Okay, so let's quickly demonstrate that. So here I have my color wheel in Photoshop. So some of you using Photoshop, you might have something like this. I never found this, view of color useful. It's actually confusing, and this I wouldn't, call this an accurate way to pick color, especially when you're painting. So I would recommend, you switch to the color wheel. Uh, so now with the triangle in between it. So outside we have the color wheel. So the color wheel has all the hues. Are you gonna use blues? Or are you gonna use your reds or yellows? And this triangle is the most important area because it shows us, our values. So basically, how you are supposed to look at this triangle is, so we have this triangle here, right? So we have this triangle here. So this y-axis here, this y-axis, it represents our values. So basically, we saw that 0 to 10 here, right? So this one is 0 and this one is 10. So 0 being pure black, as you see here. Now I have pure black, and 10 being pure white. So whenever I do this, I have no color. So if I go to 10, I have no color. I only have white. And if I go to 0, I have no color. I only have black. So the once I go in between this area, between 10 and 0, that's where all my colors are. You see? You get that? Yeah. So, now I have red. So it's all in between this, 1 to 9 area. So this 1 to 9 area. So we have, 1. Okay. So let's say, I pick a color, any random color. So I'll pick up, slightly darker red. I'll pick, a nice bright blue, something to remind me of spring, pick a nice yellow. So we have 3 colors here, right? Remember when we said each color is like a coin, and we only see the first side, which is the color. The other side is the value. So we always have to be mindful of that each color has its own value. So using my own knowledge of, color and value, let's, see if we can quickly place this each color, on the value scale, where they sit on the value scale. So this red might sit somewhere around here, I think. Might sit around somewhere around here. And this nice bright blue might sit somewhere around here, and this yellow might sit somewhere around here. Okay, so how do we quickly check this? So if you press Control Y, you can go quickly to, to black and white in Photoshop. So if you don't know how to do that, so I think it's somewhere around your color settings. Okay. Yeah. So what you need to do is you need to go to your color settings and make sure that in gray you set it to dot gain 20%. If you press Control Y, basically you can get, it's like a shortcut to black and white. So you can quickly check your values, by just pressing Control Y. In the beginning, I used to do this. So what I used to do is I just used to create, hue and saturation, and just reduce the saturation. This is wrong. So basically, this way you're not exactly getting an accurate representation of, black your value and your color. So I would never recommend to use this. Don't use this. Instead, just do what I did. So just go to color settings and gray, set it to dot gain 20%. And every time you press Control Y, you get value read, and this is the accurate one. This is the way you're supposed to measure. So as you can see, I got this one right, and I got this one right, and this one is slightly, I placed it a little darker. So this one is more or less, the same value as yellow. So the blue and yellow are more or less the same value. See how tricky it can get? Yeah. So it's easy to get this wrong. I often get this wrong sometimes, that I have to really double check it whenever I'm painting. So every time I'm painting, I'm always, on Control Y, Control Y. I'm always checking my values. So we are able to quickly, place where our values sit, place where our colors sit on the value scale. So this is the kind of skill that you'll be practicing in the forthcoming days, and this is why it's so important. Usually in a painting, you're working with more than just three colors, right? That's what means it presents more chances for you to get it wrong. So make sure you practice the skill. So make sure that you can actually place any color over here correctly on the value scale. So this is basically what it means to to read your values, to check your values. So the important concept, again reiterating to understand, is that each color has its own value, has its own brightness. Okay, and this is how they sit on the value scale. Okay, so what are tints, shades, and neutrals? They're actually quite simple. So basically, we have pure red, right? So let's say you go to the store, you're going to a painting shop, and you're buying a tube of nice red paint. Let's say you're buying some ochre red. So straight out of the tube, it's pure color. It's pure, untinted. It's pure color. So let's say I want to make this red a little darker. So what I do, I add black. So when I add black to make it darker, so that red is going to get a little darker, right? It's going to get a little darker. So this is what you call a shade. So whenever you add black to make a color darker, so that's you're basically creating shades of this red. So you can, make it add a little more black, and you can create another shade. So this is, you get the idea. So this is basically what it means. When you do the opposite, so let's say I have this red again. I want to make it lighter. So let's say for a flesh tone, let's say I'm painting flesh. So in this case, this is what you would call a tint. So when you're adding white to a color, so I'm adding white to it, just making brighter. So I'm basically tinting it. So I'm adding white to it. Okay. You can also, try another shade. So these are basically what you call your tints. Okay. And what are neutrals? Can you guess? Okay. So neutrals basically mean, so we saw black and white, right? So when I add gray to a color, oops, every time I okay, sorry. So every time I add gray to a color, it's called a neutral. So basically, when you're ready, if you want to reduce the saturation of a color, not exactly change its value. So when you're making a shade or a tint, you're basically changing the color's value. You're making it brighter, you're changing its value. You're making it darker, you're changing its value. But a neutral is when you don't change the value of a color. You're not exactly changing the value of a color. You're not making it brighter or darker. You're only reducing the saturation of it. So again, going back to that concept of the tube that you bought from the store. So when I press that tube, it's pure color. It can't get any red than that. The moment, so that's what you see over here. When you push the saturation to the extreme, you can't get any more red than that. So that's pure color. That's what we meant by pure color. So if I want to neutralize that, I don't want it to be this intense. I want it to be the same value. I don't want it to go darker or lighter. I just want to reduce the saturation of it. So when I do this, this is basically what you call a neutral. Adding gray. So we have the pure color here. And when I add gray to it, it's get neutralized. The red gets neutralized, becomes less red. So the values are the same. I'm not changing the values. So let's quickly check that. So if I press Control Y, as you can see, the values are pretty much the same out here. As for us here, you can see for a shade, the value gets darker. For a tint, the value gets lighter. But when you're adding gray, when you're creating a neutral, the values will more or less remains the same. But what changes is the saturation, the purity of that color. So that's basically, what the value scale, shades, tints, and neutrals are. Right? Okay. So I hope you guys understand that. Like if you rewatch this again, if something's not clear, or just drop something, a question in the comments, and we'll get it straightened out. Okay, so now that we've seen all what value scalars, what shades are, tints are, neutrals are, we'll see what the values do exactly. So we saw what are shades, what are tints, neutrals, but what exactly do they do in a painting? What's their job? So values have just two jobs in a painting. So the first one is that they help us establish the lighting and depth in a painting by the use of contrast. Without values, there'll be no concept of light or depth in your painting. So that's your first job. So the values first job is to set up the lighting and set up depth. What's in the foreground, what's closer to you, and what's away from you. So that's its first job. Second job is to create the mood of your scene. Is your painting showing sadness, or is your painting showing happiness, or is your painting showing horror? So these are the two jobs of value, and no other thing does this better. Not your colors, nothing else that you can do this better. Which is setting up depth and setting up that mood. Values do it the best. So this is basically a still from Blade Runner, one of my most favorite movies, called Blade Runner 2049. I'm sure you guys seen it. So this is the two things that we talked about. So the first one being lighting and depth. You can see that it's a very cloudy, space here. So you can see that it's not exactly spring or sunshine or a daisy Disney colorway. No, this is a very moody kind of hazy kind of scene. So that immediately you can only, see that using the values. So the left hand side has the color, so the right hand side is only the values. So let's see what kind of values are they working with. You see how, let me just quickly bring up that value scale. I'm gonna quickly bring up that value scale. Okay. Okay. So, in this movie, we know this movie, right? So this is basically not a happy movie. This is more of a very moody, cyberpunkish kind of movie. So they, all the shots in the movie sticks to a value range around here. So this entire shot has a value range about here. So this they're only using like 1 to 5. So 0 being pure black, they're only sticking with 1 to 5 here to show that rainy, moody kind of scene. And see how they're establishing depth. So this is clearly your foreground, right? So this is your foreground, and this is your background, and this is how light works, right? Everything that's closer to you has more contrast. It's more darker. That has more black and everything. But as things move away from you, let's say you're standing in a beach or standing in the top of a rooftop, as things move extremely far away from you, it gets lighter, as you can see here. And this concept, seen in real life, and we use it in paintings as well. So that's why we're clearly able to establish, what's a foreground and what's a background. So these, these two concepts are used in cinema and in painting as well. Cinema for me is basically just paintings in motion. Every frame is basically a painting, and this is exactly a every cinematographer more or less thinks the same as a painter. He's thinking in terms of values, how to make the frame read, so that the film is beautiful and is also readable. And okay, so this is the first concept that we discussed. So the first concept is we established the lighting using our values, and we also established our depth. So, and the second job to create the mood of your scene is your painting showing sadness, or horror. So let's quickly pull some more references for that. So I usually get these from, this website called Film Grab. It's an excellent site which, has it has plenty of screenshots from movies. So this is my go-to website for that. So let's think of a horror movie. So what's a good horror movie? Okay, I think Conjuring is would be good. Let's just quickly, compare some. Okay, don't we have Conjuring here? Okay, I'm just gonna go to Conjuring scenes. Okay, so this one, right? So I've seen this movie. I'm sure you guys would have seen this as well. Let's quickly make some room here. Okay, so this is basically a horror movie, right? So I'll place this over here. Let's think of a happy movie. So what comes to mind? So Up, the animated movie from Pixar. So very beautiful, one of my most favorite movies. So we'll just quickly. This is a scene from the movie, right? So we'll just copy paste that here. Now, just by looking at these two in parallel, you can see that mood, right? So immediately, so let me just quickly remove the color because the color is doing a lot of work. So now I remove the color and we are just using values. So just by using values with no color, they've immediately, just by looking these two frames, let's say you haven't seen any both of these two movies, but you can immediately feel the mood of that movie, right? So this one is clearly horror. Uh, because they have not, they are stuck with, look at how with the darker values that they've used. So as you can see in the color wheel over here, just as I'm running this color picker over this, there's hardly any white, right? They're sticking with, the 1-2 range. They're not even going to 5. So only for the light source, I think they've used pure white. So the light source has pure white, but the rest of the scene is overall dark. Everything is dark. So they want to be, when you're making a ghost movie, you want everything to be dark. So, when the ghost comes out, you're really scared. So basically that's the whole concept behind a horror movie. So this is how they pick out values when making a horror movie. So they want everything to be dark. That's how you feel scared. When you're in a dark room, you're scared. It's as simple as that. As for Up, the entire movie takes place in broad daylight. It's a very warm. The concept of the movie is being warm. It makes you feel something very warm. It's a beautiful movie. It's not at all scary. It's supposed to make you, feel warm, loved, and happy. And when you're thinking happy, you want, bright colors, right? So that's basically what this doing here. So that's what they're doing with the values here. So mostly everything is white. Black is hardly used. Everything is either that 5 to 10 range. So this being 5 and this being 10. So that's the value plan that they stick with. So this is the job of values. So just by using value, we are able to convey so much to our audience. So yeah, so I think that would be good enough for the first part. I'm sure we covered enough information for the first one. In the next one, we'll do a little more in depth about how we'll actually see how we can use values, how to read them much more in detail. And in the third one, we'll do a value study about how I study values when I'm painting. Okay then. Thanks for joining me today, guys. Have a good one. And if you have any further questions, just drop them in the comments and I'll answer them. And if you like this video, if you found it useful, please do like and subscribe and share it with your friends. Thank you so much, guys. See you on the next one.